the King of Kings. And actually, the work that Jesus came to do, the person who Jesus is, can be illustrated using the 4 kings in a set of playing cards. The first is the King of Spades. And when I think about a spade, I think a little bit about John Hughes and maybe Andy Taylor. Because when I think about a spade, I think about work. Men at work, have you seen the road sign? The man with the spade digging a hole. Yeah? And it reminds us that Jesus came with work to do. In fact, our reading told us, didn't it, that Joseph, who was a bit scared about having a baby, was to call this baby Jesus because he had some work to do. He would save his people from their sins. As Jesus grew up, the Bible tells us that Jesus came to do the work that God the Father had given him to do. To preach and teach the truth, to show people how they should live, to live a perfect life. Everything that God said he should do is what he did. The King of Kings came, if you like, as a King of Spades because he came to do the work that God had given him to do. He came to work in a way that you and I wish we could work but can't. Because we get it wrong, don't we? We make mistakes, don't we? We say things and do things and think things that we shouldn't, don't we? But Jesus, the King of Kings, worked and lived perfectly. But then the next king we've got is the King of Clubs. You see, the Bible also tells me that the work Jesus came to do would be painful work. Difficult work. In fact, the Bible uses the word clubs associated with Jesus. Because Jesus, who was born in a manger, who lived a perfect life, eventually at the age of 33 would die on a cross. And you know, boys and girls, and bigger boys and girls, before he died on the cross, men clubbed him. They beat him. He was the king who was clubbed, literally. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because people like me and people like you had done things wrong. And he would stand in our place. He would take the hit. Not just the physical club, but he would take the anger of God against my sin and yours. And he would take all that punishment, all that suffering. He came to die. He was the king clubbed. He came to give his life as a ransom for many. People like you and people like me, to pay the price in his suffering and death. But you might ask yourself, why would Jesus leave the splendor of heaven, the King of Kings, creator of all things, sustainer of the universe, and come and be born as a tiny little baby in a manger, live a life and then get clubbed? Why would Jesus do that? Well, you see, because he's the King of Hearts. He's the King of love. It was because of love for people like you and people like me that Jesus left heaven and lived and died and rose again. Because he loves you so much. God so loved the world, including you if you'll believe, that he sent his only Son. That whoever believes in him should not perish, would not die, but have everlasting life. The King of love. The Bible tells me God didn't just talk about love. He didn't just define love. He demonstrated love in that this, while we were still sinners, while we were still shaking our fist at God and telling him to get lost, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Greater love has no man than this, than someone would lay down his life for his friends, and even more for his enemies. The King of Hearts reminds us that's who Jesus is. The King of love, my shepherd is, whose goodness never fails. Which leaves us with a response, doesn't it? Because if Jesus came as the King of Spades to do the work that God had given him to do, to save his people from their sins, if that work required him to die, to be clubbed and beaten, and to be crucified, and if he did that because he loves you and me so very much, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to do as the Sainsbury's advert reminded us, make room? Actually, it's more than that. Because actually, the King of Diamonds reminds us that a diamond is very precious. A diamond is to be treasured. And our response today to the King who did all that work, the work that you couldn't do, but he did for you, the work that cost him suffering and slander and death, the work that was done because he loves you so very much, that King asks you to treasure him in your heart. There's lots of things that are precious to us, and there's nothing wrong with those things in and of themselves. But the Bible tells us, and Christmas encourages us, not just to make room for Jesus, but to make him the very treasure of your heart, the center of your life, your hope, your joy, your peace, your life in abundance now and forever. Jesus said, where your heart is, that's where your treasure is. Can I ask you, not the person sitting next to you, you, where's your heart this morning? What are you treasuring this morning? Oh, there's lots of things to enjoy. Don't think becoming a Christian means you become dull and boring. You can't enjoy all the great things that God has given us, including this wonderful season of the year. But can I encourage you, don't treasure those things. Treasure him. He worked for you. He died for you. He loves you. Not in a way to pay him back, because you can't do that, and he doesn't want you to do that, but simply to respond. Worship Christ, the newborn King. Come, let us adore him. Will your meek soul still receive him? Will you make room? Will you treasure not the King of Diamonds, but the picture that this gives to us? Gold for a king. Is he your king? Incense because he's the priest that brings you to God and God to you. Is he your priest? Myrrh, reminding us of a Savior who died. Can you make that personal? He died for me. Is there room in your heart for God to write his story in your story? It would be so easy for us to sing a last song, to enjoy some refreshments, to crack on as though we've done our bit on a Sunday morning. I'm going to give you about 4.5 minutes to reflect and to answer the question that this song that will appear on the screen asks you. Is there room in your heart for the King so that God can write his story in you? We'll watch this little video clip. We'll sing.